Hey everybody, I'm not sure what we're going to call this. So this is something I thought about doing for a while, and this is Jennifer Ruggins Muir, and she's just one of the people in town that if you don't know already, you kind of need to know her. She's kind of a mover and a shaker. She's just doing so many amazing things. Wanted you to get to know her and then get a little bit deeper into a conversation that she started on Facebook and that I just think is so pertinent to so many people. So welcome, Jennifer. You've just come from a warehouse.
Yes.
So why don't we start there? What are you up to with that?
My husband and I run a company called the Wild Hibiscus Flower Company. We run the North American branch of it, and we import and distribute Australian gourmet food products, basically. So I was climbing around in the rafters, counting inventory.
Counting inventory
Yes.
of Australian products.
Of Australian products.
So it's not just hibiscus.
There's different things. We have cocktail concentrates, butterfly pea flowers. We have teas. We have sugars made with hibiscus flowers as well, and then of course the signature hibiscus flower and syrup.
Okay. That's a plug. So I don't know anything about that, but that sounds cool. Well, speaking of plugs, we should give a plug to Star Cafe. This is, if you're not from Knowlton, this is one of the happening places. And if you see behind me, you see the Acoustic Village, and that's a music thing that happens once a month. As a matter of fact, it just so happens in 2 weeks, St. Paul's Band will be playing at the Acoustic Village, one of the opening acts. We did that last year too. It's great fun. We're going to have some special guests, so that's on the go. You're also very involved in Knowlton Academy, which is something that's close to our heart, to my heart, to St. Paul's heart. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what you're doing at Knowlton Academy.
I coordinate the school garden project, and I think if you're from Knowlton, everybody probably knows about the garden. By now, it's been lots of fun, and it's that time of year. So I'm in the process of putting together the spring plan and pulling out the seeds and getting back into garden mode. So hopefully as soon as the snow is cleared, we have Earth Day things and stuff that we can do. So hopefully the kids will be back down in the garden within the next 3 to 4 weeks.
And that's not just Knowlton. That's like, you've had TV, you've had folks from CTV, right?
CTV, yeah, from Montreal. They came to do a story on us, and the lady actually, which is a huge compliment to everybody involved who made this happen, the lady said she'd never seen anything like it at the school before.
It's true.
So,
It really is amazing.
I gave a presentation to the Lac Brome Garden Club a few weeks ago. So I put a slideshow together, sort of showing the project from beginning to end, and it surprised even me looking at it like that. I don't normally sit down and look at it from beginning to end like that, and I've also been compiling information because we're redoing our website, and I've kept a list of all of the people who have helped us, giving us one plant or giving us a brand new freezer, anything, or giving us time, and I have 179 people on that list, and I'd say at least 3/4 of them have helped multiple times or in many ways. It's not just a one-off thing. So if you want to say everybody's helped me out 3 times, that's 600 donations or hours or what have you. So it's a school garden, but it's really a community garden, I would say, for sure.
It really is amazing. And then the produce from the garden, that's
the produce for the garden it depends on the weather. We don't really get much before school is out in June. The early part of the season is generally spent just planting and organizing. We can maybe get a few radishes, lettuce out before the kids quit. But over the summer, we can either harvest it and freeze it, but we also have volunteers who would come in and help, and they would take home a basket of food with them. And we also did harvest, I think, 3 or 4 times and went to the local food bank.
Wow.
And then in the fall, of course, the kids are there, so it's free snacks, free carrots for all the students, and then for things like potatoes and things that need to be cooked, we give them to the cafeteria, and we also have a teacher at school who works with some of the families in need within the school. And so she'll often come to me in the fall and say she needs 3 boxes of food or what have you, and so I get those organized and she gets them to the families that need them.
That's amazing. And then the other thing, you right into vegetables and things. I don't know how much you can say about it, but there are some folks around the area who give sort of vegetables that come from stores. I don't know if we can mention it, but they come for the kids, and I often see you on Facebook with big
Rhubarb.
plate of rhubarb, tons of rhubarb. But the other week you had like tons of carrots and celery and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, well, it started, it was the first year that we were doing it, and we hadn't even planted the garden yet, and so we had started doing something called Taste of the Season, and it was in the spring, so I was trying to get kids to taste things that they might not have tasted before, and so we did asparagus, and a few weeks later I wanted to do rhubarb, and I went to this grocery store, and it was $3.99 a pound, and I needed to feed 250 kids, so I said, well, that's crazy, everybody's got rhubarb in their backyard, right? So I just put up on Facebook, like, hey, does anybody have any rhubarb? And by the next day I had about 85 pounds of rhubarb. And I was saying, no more, like, don't give me any more. And then that made me start thinking, started my whole, I like to call it urban foraging, that it made me think of how many people have apple trees that they don't pick, or rhubarb that they don't use, things like in September when they've just got tomatoes or zucchinis coming out of their ears. And so I posted about this on Facebook, and then said, does anybody have an old freezer they could sell me for cheap? And I got 3 freezers, and I had Judy Martin from the High Clan Foundation contact me the same day and said, we've been following the project, and now we finally found a way to get involved because it was a nutritional thing, I guess. And she gave me $2,500 to buy freezers. So we went from like, people must have, some rhubarb to within, I think, 36 hours having 100 pounds of free produce and 3 freezers and a $2,500 donation. So I love how, and since then it's just kept growing. I mean, I've been doing rhubarb every year now, so I think I got like 300 pounds last year, and we've had greenhouses call, because people know that I do this now, so I've had greenhouses call me when they're shutting down at the end of the year, and the Racine Carrée, the fund of the Racine Carrée called me last year and gave me 250 pounds of peppers and tomatoes. I had the garden center in West Brome, Rêve et Jardin, call me last year in November and said, do you want our fall squash and pumpkin display, because it was after Halloween, so he gave me 400 pounds of squash. So it's out there. All this stuff is out there.
I had a friend who used to say, give people the opportunity to say no.
Yeah.
And they don't. And but unless you ask, you don't know. And that, I mean, I love how things like that tend to explode.
Yes.
So what's, I mean, we hear you and your excitement and all kinds of things. So last year, sort of saw some posts on Facebook, and I think you're just one of those people who I think we just automatically assume you're always out. You're always doing stuff. You're always Facebooking, but your Facebook sort of said, I deal with mental illness, and I guess for me that was kind of, it wouldn't have been something I would have thought, but I think that's often true.
Yes.
Maybe you could just say a little bit about your experience of dealing with mental illness, and then we'll maybe move from there. But just sort of how that started. And
for as long as I can remember, I've had a lot of anxiety, and I get it from my father, who got it from his father, and unfortunately one of my children has inherited it from me. Because I know this, I've been able to work with him since he was young to help him, where I don't think I really identified that it was something that I had until I was probably in my 20s.
Can you tell me what that looks like? I mean, maybe we're going to go there, but what for you, how does that manifest itself?
It's just, it's hard to explain it. It's almost worrying times 1,000, like I get a pain in my shoulder and I convince myself I'm dying of lung cancer.
Yeah.
You know, and it's all the what ifs and the what ifs and the what ifs, and it takes the joy out of things because you're so worried about how something is going to work out or how something is going to happen, and it all ends up fine. But in the meantime, you're screaming and yelling, and I can't do this, and it's you know, it's hard, and you have to push through things. You know, maybe you feel like you don't want to go out and you can't see people, and it stops you from enjoying yourself.
Okay.
And it's just you feel all the time.
Okay. And yet, we see you pushing through. So, I didn't want to interrupt. I just
No,
thought
that's
that was,
okay.
no, good. Keep going.
Well, yeah, and it comes in waves. You know, there's some things. I mean, this is just my experience with it. I'm sure there are. I know there are people who have worse cases of it than me. You know, often I'll be fine for a long time, and you know, this year there was just a lot of things I think that all contributed to it sort of getting away from me again, shall we say. You know, I mean, I'm never not anxious at all, but I mean but a lot of people are anxious.
Sure.
It's you know, it's impossible not to ever be nervous or anxious about things, but you know, I have a good life. You know, I have a husband that I love, and I've got great kids, and I've got interesting projects and jobs that I work on. So, you know, that's kind of makes it hard. You don't want to sound like you're complaining,
Sure.
right?
No.
And maybe, you know, sometimes because nothing is wrong, that's why it's so hard to identify. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That it's hard to. Well, I can't be depressed. My life is great. So what's wrong with me?
Sure, which adds then to
Or you don't want to
those
sound like you're
feelings.
complaining. You know, do I go and complain to somebody? And you get to travel, you do this, you do that, you know, and maybe you sound like you're.
It strikes me anxiety is not necessarily about circumstance. It's a physiological kind of a thing. It's not. Lots of people, you know, have pretty good lives and they live them pretty well. But there are lots of folks who live good lives but are anxious, as you were saying.
I mean, even, you know, with things like depression, I mean, you can be depressed because there are terrible things happening in your life, but you can also just be clinically depressed, and that's a mental illness, and no matter how fantastic your life is, you don't feel great. But then you wonder why you don't, because you should, so you feel maybe, you know, like I said, you feel embarrassed to say anything because you sound maybe ungrateful or, you know.
So that strikes me as an anxiety too. What will people think? What will people think? Well, oh my goodness. So I was talking with someone yesterday, and she said, you know, every family deals with some kind of mental illness, whether they realize it or not. You know, it's just we deal with it, and you know, just the ability to sort of figure out what you're thinking and why, to stop, and you know, catastrophic thinking is one of the things that I'm learning about. You know, so often our brains go to worst case scenarios. Oh no, what's going to happen? Well, your brain I think it's a defense mechanism. We go, what's the worst thing that can happen, and how can I prepare? And that makes you like. So how have you sort of dealt with that?
I think because it just sort of exploded and got it so out of hand, I did need to go to the doctors, and I did need to take some medication. It didn't suit me. I did not have a good reaction to it. At first I thought that I felt better because it did control my anxiety, and I didn't feel anxious anymore, but it slowly turned into depression, and it happened so slowly I didn't really notice, and then all of a sudden one morning I said, oh, where's the last month gone? When's the last time I put makeup on? You know, or it'd be 2 p.m, well, I better get dressed and do the dishes before the kids get off the school bus, and it was like, oh, wait a minute, this is not okay either, you know. So asking for help is good, but maybe the first thing that you try won't work. And it's important to just read the signs of your body, because, I mean, as important as doctors are, and I'm certainly not a doctor, nobody knows better than yourself what is working for you or not working for you.
That's important. That's figuring out the right medication, being in touch with your doctor, knowing, you know, when the darkness is closing in. Great. And now, so you deal with a lot of other people in the community and who are coping with one one issue or another.
Aren't we all?
Well, yes, yeah. So, what are some of the things that you do in the community to help folks like that?
Well, I help a lot of friends or people that I know. Friends who have trouble, I guess, and kids, I don't want to say too much because everybody knows everybody around here, but I mean, it's not really anything specific. It's when I see a need, I step in and try and help people so that they can get themselves out of whatever situation they've gotten themselves into. I think, too, with this is when you talk to people and when you help people, and you're still friends, then they're not embarrassed or they're not shy to tell you that they're having a problem, and then you can help, and it's the same with this anxiety and stuff. Since I started talking about it on Facebook, it's been interesting how many people have told me that they feel the same way. And some of them maybe were too embarrassed to talk about it, and other people didn't even realize. And then after hearing me say how I've been feeling or what I've been doing, they were like, hey, hang on, wait a minute. And just to have somebody who understands and that you can have conversations with, or I get a phone call from somebody, and okay, let's talk, sometimes that is just enough. I was with a very close friend of mine, and he suffers from a lot of the same thing, much worse than I do actually. And we were talking, and I was sort of doing this with my hands, and he noticed, right? And he just sort of went, Jen, you're fidgeting, and he knows what that means, right? I was like, because it's an anxious thing, and he just saw my hands doing that, and he knew what it was, and he said something. So it just kind of made me go, oh.
Wow. And again, it's one of those things that once you start, it explodes a little bit. And I think the worst thing we can do is sort of not reach out like that and assume that we're just doing it on our own. But you kind of, it's a cliche, I guess, but you kind of live your life out loud on Facebook, and that is just so, I think, helping for people. It helps people to see someone living a good life and struggling.
Yeah.
And it's okay to struggle.
Yeah.
It's okay to have those things. So this is just a conversation that we had. There are some folks around town that I love to have conversations with, or I would like to have conversations with. And I thought, if I want to have a conversation, if I want to know more about this person, I want to know more about Jennifer Ruggins Muir, then I'm sure other people do. Or if they don't know you yet, then you're someone that maybe people need to know about. And so, that's the idea. We have Tim Talks, and I don't know what this is. If you have a good idea, if anyone has a good idea what we call these things.
I like Tim Talks.
You like the Tim Talks?
I
do. Okay, so maybe we'll stick with Tim Talks, and we'll carry on. Again, this is Star Cafe. This is Wild Hibiscus. Garden Lady. What's the whole company name? So
the Wild Hibiscus Flower Company.
Flower Company?
Yes.
So you can look that up on the interweb. And so Star Cafe and Acoustic Village, and it's thanks for watching. I see there are 5 people there, which is a pretty good start. Anyway, we're going to have some lunch. Anyway, thanks very much. God bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was fun.
Good.
Yeah.